I'm getting picked up in 7.5 hours, right? And she's saying this like, we don't need to get the surgery. And she told me, the Holy Spirit told me to tell you that, you're covered and you'll be able to go and play. And I'm still like, this is. I was like, man, she gonna go to God on me. Yeah. And I was like, when I'm gonna defy God, I'm gonna defy her. And I'm like, man, this is tough. Because if I go get the surgery, well, I'm gonna call her back and say I got the surgery. Grandma, you listen. I walked through the first with him. He kept walking through the second set of double doors, and I stopped. And he looked back at me, and he's like, what you doing? I'm like, I'm going to play. Like I'm not getting surgery. Looked at me crazy again, and now he's, he's serious. And he calls coach. Coach comes down with the doctor. And the doctor tells me, Tre, I don't know what your grandmother told you. She's not a doctor. I get that God is involved. There was a conversation with God and everything, but you cannot play. He said it like 3 times. You cannot play. You cannot play. I let the league sworn at.
What's up, y'all? We are on another episode of Living Legends. My name is Farrah Garrett, and today we have
Tre Kelley.
Sir. Tre, how does it feel to get on same with us?
Man, this is an honor to have a former player of mine be able to interview me. So we definitely gonna have fun with this.
And I'm just gonna jump straight into it, Tre.
Okay.
So we're gonna go through everything. Coaching us at Dunbar, overseas career, a little bit NBA, high school, everything.
Yeah.
Early up and coming days. So I'm gonna get into that first. Talk about your early up and coming days as in Washington, D.C.
All right, well, I was born in 1985, and I really didn't get on the basketball scene until I was probably like 9 or 10 years old. It started late. I didn't really play on any teams early like they do now, 6, 7, 8 years old. I touched the basketball, but I just wasn't, I wasn't competitive as far as, what I was doing daily. Blacktop basketball was a huge thing in Washington, D.C. in that time. And, I would get on the court with like a couple friends, or I know my uncle and my older cousin was playing basketball back then. But I didn't really jump into it heavily until I was like 9, almost 10 years old. And I played for the number 12 Boys and Girls Club in Northeast Washington, D.C., which is right in the neighborhood where I grew up, Brentwood, Saratoga Avenue neighborhood. And things kind of started from there. To be honest, I wasn't that talented. I played center. I was center. The first position I ever played was center. I was taller than everybody my age, bigger, and that was the first position I played. So the next team that I played for was St. Luke's Church, and that church is on East Capitol, right over there in Northeast. And I played power forward, so big body, just out there playing. But I started developing a little talent, enough to be able to compete and play, start. I started for both of those teams, and then life kind of started hitting me in a sense, where I went through a huge tragedy with losing my mom at 11 years old. And not only that was the start of my life, but that was a huge start to my basketball career. Even though I started before that, technically, losing my mom kind of ignited this fire that I don't know if I would have ever had without that event in my life. So when that happened, I was totally different just within days. I was a different person. I had a different heart. I had a different mindset. I grew up pretty fast after that, and the rest was history.
So, what really drove you to take basketball more serious after such a serious loss like that, instead of just falling into the wrong crowd and path.
Yeah, so
You stay in the gym.
so within about 7 minutes of me and my family getting the call that that my mom had passed. My grandmother was the one that got the call. Within 7 minutes, I would say no longer than 7 minutes, I knew what I should do moving forward. It was a divine experience. It was something that God could only be a part of. So, I was sitting on my grandmother's couch. She gets the call and she starts screaming. And, when she told me what happened, I ran out of the door. And I ran out of the house, ran up the street. And, I wasn't crying, I wasn't screaming, I don't think I said anything. I just ran. And I went blank, for like seconds, probably 5 seconds. I don't remember part of that run. And when I got up the street, I just stopped. I could see some people up ahead that I knew, some older guys, but in hindsight, they probably thought I was just, I looked crazy. I'm running, but I'm not yelling. I'm not screaming. I'm not even reacting. I'm just running, then I stop. I was totally confused. When I came to, the world was spinning a little bit. And in my grandmother's house at the time, there was 4 guys that were friends of my uncle. So they heard what I just heard. One of them ran up behind me and, just was like, man, Tre, come on, man, let's go back to grandma's house. We love you, man. I'm sorry, man. Just kind of giving me that speech. And then when we decided to go back to my grandmother's house, I think that's when everything started, which would really propel the rest of my life. So when we turned around and walked back down Saratoga Avenue, I asked myself, a couple questions. And the first one was like, wow, I'm not gonna see my mom again, because that was just confusing. That was a huge shock. It was a big tragedy, man, the most tragic thing that I've ever experienced. And that was my first reaction once I got my thoughts together, like, man, I'm not gonna see my mom again. Like, how does that even happen? And I don't even know how she passed away yet at this point. Literally, this is a couple minutes later. And for whatever reason, I didn't think that I was that mature at the time, just being 11 years old. But my next question to myself was, like, dang, how do I make her proud of me? And as I was saying that, I got some flashes of some thoughts. Remembering her at a couple of my games, like smiling. When I played with St. Luke's Church, as I already mentioned, we won the championship that year. And I can remember her just, being proud of that. So I was asking myself that I can remember her smile in my head. And something told me, like, if you want to make her proud of you, just look this way, which was to my left. And as I looked, there was the basketball court. So as all these thoughts are going through my head, I see the basketball court to my left. And I just, immediately in my mind just thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. That court to this day is named after me. Yeah.
That court?
Yeah.
Saratoga Avenue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So that was, things, come full circle. So I'm 11 years old at the time, probably around like 10 years later when I was in college. We won 2 back-to-back NIT championships at the University of South Carolina. And they used to have this thing called Tre Day in my neighborhood, where they would bring bands, food, whatever, and they would celebrate just what I was doing. And during that time, they named the court after me.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. That's phenomenal. Let's get into your early days before high school.
Yeah.
So, were you a highly touted player, middle school wise?
I wasn't highly touted. I played my 6th grade season a couple of months after my mom passed. So she passed away August 22nd, 1996. This year, August 22nd will be 30 years, since I lost my mom, which is incredible. But I went to another elementary school. I transferred because I did move with my grandmother permanently. And when I played for that school, I think everything started, like, as far as like my confidence, people having confidence in me. One of the coaches that I played for at the Boys and Girls Club was like, why do they have you in the post? You're a guard. You should be handling the basketball. So I started playing the point. I couldn't go left to save my life, but I was able to, I was quick enough. I had enough ball handling skills to get by people. And I went to Deal Junior High School at the time, Alice Deal, in Northwest Washington, D.C. And I think the confidence came from people, just even my teammates was like, man, this young guy, man, he's cold. Like, he could play. And that was kind of giving me some rhythm, mentally to just try things. And we were playing a lot of basketball at that time, a lot of pickup games on the blacktop, a lot of club league games, just, different teams. People just say, oh, we're going to play in this tournament. So it was a lot of basketball being played. And I tell the young guys these days, like, that helps you learn a lot about yourself, what you can do. I developed certain moves that I still probably use, 30 years later.
Right.
And when I went to Alice Deal's 7th and 8th grade year, I was just able to do different things, man. I was able to score the basketball. I developed, a mentality of being a point guard. I watched a lot of basketball, so I learned from that. And, heading into high school, I just thought, it was time to head into high school. My 9th grade year was the first year that they allowed 9th graders to play varsity.
Mm-hmm.
So we won a championship my 7th grade year at Alice Deal. And I played with at that time anyway, like a really great junior high school team. These guys were athletic, they were dunking. You're talking about 7th, 8th, 9th graders, being able to dunk, which was crazy back then. But I learned a lot from them, and then I became a starter as an 8th grade player, and just kind of propelled a little bit. I went to 5-star camp in Pennsylvania and came back with 3 trophies. Like, I was the All-Star Game MVP. I led my division in scoring, and I think they had a one-on-one tournament, and I beat everybody. Mm-hmm. So, of course, I came back. That gave me some confidence as well.
Who are some of those players? Any unique stories from that experience and the one-on-ones, or any camp experiences?
Man, I think like guys like, I think LeBron was at that. He played, of course, up, even though we were the same age. I think he was already like 6'5" or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is like 8th grade going into 9th grade. Mm-hmm. Charlie Villanueva, who played in the NBA. I remember some of those guys, Raymond Felton, Anthony Roberson, all big-time college and pro basketball players. So I just remember, just competing. I think what I was going through a lot at that time. My mom passed in the summer, heading into the 6th grade. So honestly, those next, 3, 4, 5 years were dark, for me in regards to just thinking about that all the time. It never really left my mind. It was hard to get over. And then I'm growing up in a neighborhood where, people getting killed like 8 times a year in the same neighborhood. So I'm trying to get over this tragedy, but I'm also going to funerals for my friends who are 15, 16, 17 years old. So I poured all of that, and I had a lot of sleepless nights. I developed bad insomnia, after my mom passed, because I wouldn't go to sleep. I was kind of nervous all the time. I was afraid, a lot, because I just couldn't believe it, for so long, even though I was facing reality that she wasn't there. And once I got on the court, though, the light was shining. Like it was one of those things, man, where I'm going through a lot when I'm off the court. A lot of things are going on, but I'm always thinking about my next opportunity to play and get better. Always got a basketball in my hand at that time, and I was pouring out that anger and that rage in between the lines, and it showed. Like I played with this, had a totally different sharpness about myself. I had a totally different approach to the game after that. So.
And then at such a young age to be able to adapt and kind of have to move on from something like that happening, what were the coaches or family members that helped you and pushed you along to help shape your mindset?
Man, probably everyone that even said anything to me. Just of course coaches and guys who I worked out with, even friends that I could just go play ball with. All of that stuff was therapy for me. Anybody who had confidence in my game, my family members. I didn't talk about it a lot at that time. I was very closed in, so it wasn't a lot of conversations about what I was going through, about my mom's death. It just wasn't. I wasn't comfortable enough to share that. I wasn't comfortable enough to even let anyone in to know that's what was going on. I mean, they knew it because it was like small times where I might have to answer a question like about my parents, or my mom is not here, my dad is always around. I live with my grandmother, so I would have to answer those things, but I wouldn't go into detail. So just opportunities for me to get away, from those thoughts. I think helped me more than anything. Being able to practice, being able to go play a game, whether it was junior high school, being able to just have an opportunity to propel myself into my future.
So, why Dunbar? Why Dunbar for high school? We want to cover that. We want to get into that because you all about Dunbar.
Absolutely.
Proud as an alumni.
Yeah. Dunbar became extremely special quickly. From before I even got into what Dunbar was all about. From 1975 to the year 1999, before I got there, Dunbar had won about 13 championships in 24 years. That's
straight.
Throughout in the 24 years from 75 to 99, Dunbar had won 13 championships.
Okay. These city titles?
They probably won, out of those 13 DCIAA titles, 7 or 8 of them were city titles, which is a huge, I don't know if you call that a dynasty, I don't know what you call that, but
legacy.
It was definitely leaving a legacy within Washington, D.C. I almost went to Spindon because that was my neighborhood school at the time. McKinley Tech would have been my neighborhood school, but they had closed down for a few years. So I was going to go to Spindon. But I went on this, almost like a field trip to the city championship game in 1999.
Right.
Dunbar played Gonzaga. And Dunbar beat Gonzaga, I think, by 2 points. And while I'm watching this, you just see black and red everywhere. And this was at the MCI Center, which is now Capital One, where the Wizards play. So you see a sea of black and red. You see people celebrating. You see something that just looked sort of special and looked different for me at that time. And I was like, man, I want to go to Dunbar. And the guy overheard me and was like, man, you want to go to Dunbar? I can't even tell you this guy's name. I could take you to the coach. I know the coach. And we went up there maybe that same week, if not maybe a week later, and met the coach, Gary Lampkins. He had just come off a city championship and became a Dunbar guy. And during that time, just my love for the place, it really took over.
Okay. So during your early days, well, first off, during your early varsity days, how was the competition like on that team? Did you come in immediately and you ran Dunbar? Or
Not
was
at
it-
all. No, I was still working my way into who I would become as a high school player, but I was extremely talented at the time. But I was a dog, like just a young guy. I'm coming at seniors. I don't care who's on the court. I'm coming at you. You know, we used to like kind of get into it with the seniors on our team because in practice, you know, we're just trying to prove ourselves. We're trying to, you know, show that you know we're young guys, but you know we got something to offer as well. So I didn't even start my freshman year, um, but I averaged about 13 points as a freshman and at Dunbar, and it was, you know, just it was a lot of flash at that time. I had some fundamentals, of course, but it was like, you know, if I'm averaging 13, 8 of them gonna get the crowd going, spin move, crossover. It's almost like I was playing for that, just that verification that you know I have arrived kind of thing. So you know, I was working my ass off. I was doing a lot to get better. We had a great coach who allowed us to get better, who you know worked hard with us. I had people outside of Dunbar that helped me as well, and you know I was just pushing it, man. I was just trying to do as much as possible to get better. 10th grade year, I became a starter, and you know, I remember starting that season not as I wanted to. You know, I wasn't first 4 or 5 games. I just didn't play well. The previous summer, I was named in the top 25 in the country for my class.
Out of everybody.
Out of everybody, I was top 25 in the entire country. And there was a lot of buzz going into my sophomore year. And, you know, I wasn't, the first 4 or 5 games, I wasn't really living up to it. I just didn't understand why. So I just kind of like thought back to, you know, everything I did to get better, just kind of like toned it down, took a deep breath, and then I just kind of ran it off the rest of that sophomore year, ended up averaging 20 points. So
what were you going through? What changed? What inspired you to get back into the motivation you usually had?
I was still young, you know, at that time, 9th and 10th grade, probably listening to some of the hype, which is natural, you know, for a kid that age. And that was 2000, 2001, so I'm 15, 16 years old. And, you know, you got papers writing about you preseason. You have everyone in the city talking about it. Young ladies, you know how it is. You're in high school. Everybody's buzzing about what you know, about to do, and you're listening to it. I never stopped working hard, so that wasn't the issue. It was just, you know, I had to kind of think about what I was doing, what I wasn't doing, and just kind of refocus and get to a point where I was playing good basketball again.
Right. And I remember you speaking on, you think you had 2 or 3 Gatorade Players of the Year awards back to back?
So that came my next year. So
Right, next
I
year.
was
That's the
DC
next
Gatorade Player of the Year. It was all first team All Met. A lot of other things those next 2 seasons. So my junior and senior year, we acquired Lorenzo Roach as my head coach at Dunbar, who I had already known, and no, we had a great friendship before that. He wasn't. I think he was only like 10, 11 years older than me at that time. So you're thinking about a 25, 26-year-old coach, and you know, young guy who knows what it's all about. Also a Dunbar guy who won, I think out of his 3 years at Dunbar, he won like 3 championships, 2 or 3 championships. So he knew what the culture was about. We spoke when he became the coach, and I told him I was all about Dunbar. I could have went to Oak Hill Academy at that time, but I was, you know, going through stuff at home. You know, I wanted to stay around my grandmother, who my mom is her daughter. So, you know, just things that we were going through as a family. We wanted to stick together, so I decided not to leave and just stay at Dunbar and fulfill my legacy there.
So would you say your grandmother is what really kept you home?
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, my grandmother saved my life. let's you know be honest and understand what was happening there. She was extremely godly, as close to God, next to God, if you ask me.
Right.
As much of a saint as I've ever seen in my life. And
we gonna get into that. We gonna get the leg story.
Yeah, so she saved my life. So there was no way I was leaving early, knowing that in 2 years I would have had to leave for college to go somewhere.
Right. So senior year at Dunbar, right?
Yeah.
No, junior summer. Mm-hmm. I remember telling me a story in your AAU days.
Mm-hmm.
You're receiving a bunch of offers from different people,
For sure.
getting ready to commit. I think you said you did have to commit somewhere.
I committed to Syracuse.
Syracuse.
Yeah.
Committed to Syracuse. So speak about that stint. When something went wrong and then you decommitted and you were still playing throughout your senior year, what happened during that summer?
I think this is where the politics of AAU, so-called, I guess you call handlers and all these people who get involved with kids, talented kids that can play, whatever sport that is, and kind of get selfish, wanting something from you when you go pro, go NBA, get drafted.
It's behind the scenes.
Yes, there was a lot of things that I couldn't control because I didn't even know a lot of what was going on behind the scenes for some of this stuff to be derailed. I just saw my stock dropping when I was clearly getting better and becoming the best player in this area by far. I averaged 30 points in my last 2 years at Dunbar. There was no way that my stock can be lowering. It just didn't make a lot of sense. Some things I learned later on down the line would happen. And even in today's world, we have podcasts, we have all of this stuff going on, and Michael Beasley's interview has been the topic around town. And the people that he's talking about, the same people that was involved with me. So, I'm not going to go into that in regards to naming people because he didn't. But it's the same group, the same AAU team, the same person who had his hand in, my recruitment and pretty much everything. We did a few things, probably 2 or 3 things that stopped me from being a McDonald's All-American. Stopped me from being able to choose whatever school I went. I mean, at one point I had
pulling offers.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah. At one point I had Georgia Tech, Miami. This was after the Syracuse thing that went dry. Georgia Tech, Miami, and there was one. UConn came in the mix at the end. I wasn't sure how serious they were, but they definitely started recruiting me towards the end of my junior year, and I'm playing this lights out basketball for those last 2 years, man. I mean, I really did whatever I wanted to do, almost everywhere I went, especially at Dunbar, on the road in Vegas, LA, different tournaments we had. We played LeBron James.
In high school?
Yeah,
Okay.
played with Oakland Soldiers at the time, and the last probably 4 or 5 minutes of that game, we're down about 5, and I scored the last 22 points for our team. And normally when you have a game like that against a team who has the #1 player in the country, you skyrocket in regards to your stock. Some people just get drafted by stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you never heard of it again unless my teammates were telling the story.
Especially with all the media going around right there. There was nobody to record you guys say like.
It was a travesty to like just not be nobody to talk about that. You got scouts, you got coaches, you got everybody, and that's where South Carolina came into play because the people who my AAU team and the coach or whoever you want to call them was involved with, they backed off even after games like that. But South Carolina, they've contacted me personally
Right.
and I backed them off of anybody that I thought would have not gave them the right information for me to go and play there. So when they came, it was like everybody backed off at the same time, but something is going on, something's wrong.
Everybody came at the same
Everybody's backing off at the same time. It was incredible for me I was I said top 25, but I was top 15 at one point, 9th and 10th grade. By the time I became a senior, which you go around town, man, and arguably, I've been thrown around as top 5 and top 10 to ever play in this town, and probably the top 1 or 2 DCIAA careers in history of DCIAA, and my stock is dropping. Like, by the time I'm a senior, I'm like number 70, which makes absolutely no sense. If you were around and was at those games, my game was evolving. I learned how to shoot the ball because I averaged 20 points as a sophomore with no jump shot. So I came back and was able to shoot. My scoring average goes up 10 points. I'm averaging 9 assists a game. So how could your stock drop? So I was already a soldier by then.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably the most important thing. And when I speak about going through my mom's death and everything, by that time and those things were happening, I was already a soldier. I was already a warrior. So it bothered me, of course, but it didn't I never had a time since my mom passed that I thought about quitting.
Right.
I thought about this is not enough for me. I can't do this. I can't do that. I never once in my life thought about quitting. And that's what helped me get through all of that.
Were there any, like going to high school in DC and being as successful as you are, were there any other temptations, whether it was off the court stuff or maybe other people in your circle that you found stuff you had to maneuver through while coming up?
Temptations?
Kind of like how stuff you would see today.
Absolutely. No, I was laser sharp in my focus at the time. I stayed away from alcohol, I stayed away from drugs, and those were where all my friends were going around, 9th and 10th grade. Everybody's maneuvering through their lives because they're going through a lot of the same stuff too. My friends and the group that I hung out with, we went to the go-go. Go-go was a thing back then where everybody was going, so we would go. And like the core group that I hung around, we stayed away from those things. And those things that you got into, young men dealing with young ladies. And I would say the temptation from that was probably the most, but the other stuff didn't bother me. Like I wasn't going to go out and be a gangster. I wasn't going to go out and feel the rage that I was having from tragedy and from going to all these funerals. By the time I was a senior at Dunbar, between my 9th and 12th grade year, I know I went to 10 plus funerals. Mm-hmm. And, I always poured that into basketball. I used to tell guys that's like, this is my gangster shit. Like, once I come in here, I'm a totally different person. Like, I'm a totally different guy. And my mentality is different, my approach is different once I step inside the line. So that helped me in more ways than one.
How did you keep your confidence during your junior year, not knowing what the future held? Almost all the offers being pulled.
So I didn't know too much about the offers being pulled until that summer after my junior year. So during the time, you got everybody coming to Dunbar. I'm talking about doing practices, even Georgetown, University of Maryland. I had 50 points one game in high school, and I remember Gary Williams, who was the coach at the time, national championship coach at the University of Maryland, writing me a handwritten note, congratulating me on scoring 50, sending me letters. They were trying to recruit me. One of the only reasons why I didn't go to the University of Maryland was they wanted me to go to prep school first to come right in and start. And I just didn't want to waste any time, going to college. And that summer was tough for me. you know, in between 11th and 12th grade year, because that's normally when you're signing.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Seeing
when-
everybody else sign. So how did
No,
you?
no, I didn't think of it that way.
Mhm.
I was running my own race. I always did that. I always had that mentality that didn't matter who we were, because guys weren't better than me. Just, it didn't matter what people were going, signing to. Like, you know, I was just locked into what was happening with me, and just trying to figure it out. And, you know, got the call from South Carolina on a Sunday, and that was just it. You know, I always just look forward. You know, just move forward. Because a lot of things that you can't control. I couldn't control what was happening at the time. I don't know how I thought that and just believed in that as such a young guy. But I didn't hang my head. I'm gonna stay in the gym. Like I'm gonna keep working hard and keep pushing myself. And by November of my junior year, because I signed as a junior, I might have signed or at least committed to South Carolina. I can't remember what that was. I can't remember if that was my senior year. Yes, it had to have been. Yeah, it had to have been November of my senior year. So before the season started, I had signed to go to South Carolina.
Okay. So when you got that first phone call, it was just a lock-in, guarantee.
Yeah, because it was pretty tragic what they were doing to me. I'm gonna be honest about that. It was pretty bad. Should have been illegal. Like
I want to get into why, but you know, you're not going.
I'll tell you why. I mean, to be honest with you, and you guys know me, man. I would never, if you guys were potential first round draft picks, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't train you. I wouldn't coach you. I wouldn't advise you. I wouldn't do anything to help you, thinking that it would pay off for me down the line. And that's what was going on. And the fact that I was such a mature kid, I was already an adult in a sense. I was going through so much that I had to grow up fast, that I wasn't just going to be controlled. I wasn't going to be manipulated into thinking that, okay, you buy me a few pair of sneakers, you give me a couple $100 here and there to do this or do that, you know, you just call all of my shots. And that just wasn't happening. So when that was understood by these people, I feel like, you know, the push backed off, like the publicity push, because that's all that is.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about politics, it's just getting these kids in the media. And the person and the group that I played for, they were the most powerful, and definitely the most powerful in this town in regards to AAU,
Mm-hmm.
and then one of the most powerful teams and figures in the country at the time, producing, you know, tons of NBA guys since then. So
How was it playing for that team?
it wasn't a lot of fun, honestly. As great as I played, it just wasn't a lot of fun because I understood a lot of those things beforehand.
Right.
You know, early on in my high school career, you could see some of the things that was happening. You could see what kind of potential some of this stuff could lead to. I didn't think it would be that bad as it ended, but you can see some of these things going on, and it just became not so much fun. You know, I had more fun playing at Dunbar. You know, being in a city that that had the buzz itself without any publicity behind it. You know, everybody's just coming to the games, and that's where the buzz comes from.
And then you talk about how important AAU was with like the situation with the offer being pulled, and then early you talk about the church league you played in, the neighborhood, this basketball always being played. How do you think as you got older it was like the power changed and people always being outside and people looking at that for talent to it being to how much power that team specifically had to make a difference for recruitment in the area?
AAU was definitely important. I think all the other stuff, all the other teams I played for, club league, the church that I played for back then. Just playing for other teams. Period. I think most of those things build character, not just as a basketball player, but as a person. Because a lot of those coaches, a lot of the people who are involved in that stuff, they're not doing it for a return. Or they're not doing it for someone to come write about it and make a story of it. AAU is a business that it shouldn't be that way. The business part should be for the people who are coming to evaluate these guys. But it's so much, there's so many adults involved, coaches, people who run some of these teams. They get involved thinking that, they can build up their program, which is, I think they should have that mindset. But when it comes to, okay, this kid goes top 5 in the draft, they're looking at I'm sure they're Googling contracts, trying to see 20%. Now it's NIL. So now these guys are thinking, man, if he goes to this school, he might get $1 million. If I'm with him, if I'm behind him, I'm getting 10, 20% of that. So AAU it's needed because I think that's where you get exploited, not in such a bad way, but you get more eyes on you. There's you go to LA, you go to Vegas or wherever these tournaments are at this time, and you got coaches there. You got people who are writing about what they see at these tournaments, how good this player is. That helps, but I think it gets contaminated when the adults start looking for something and they make it a business.
Now let's dive into your collegiate career. I can't even name all the accolades that you've told me over the years off the top of my head. So I'm gonna let you do that. But just starting off freshman who you played against, the NBA players you played against, the records you broke in. Name being in the gym, I'm pretty sure it is by now.
I don't think so. I'll be going into the Hall of Fame this fall, University of South Carolina. So it'll be up somewhere. I don't know where they're going to put it, but you see my picture around even nowadays when you go down there. But coming on campus as a freshman, man, it was of course a different experience coming from Washington D.C. You got all of these students, I think 60,000 students on campus. And, you are a known commodity on this campus at this university, playing in a big time conference like the SEC, which has always been top 1 or 2 conferences in America, even when I was playing. And, throughout those 4 years, man, I just gradually developed. I always had my mind on my game. If I didn't have a good practice, a good workout, bad day, I was always thinking about why and how I could help myself the next day, always. And, with that kind of focus, I did get better. I was able to develop myself, use the coach's information, people who I was working out with, just to develop and grow. And I probably started to hit certain turns into the right trajectory. Definitely as a freshman, but more so as a sophomore, becoming a full-time starter. Being able to just understand, I wasn't coming out. My last 3 years, I was barely coming out the game.
Right.
I was playing 38, 39 minutes. I might sit for 15 seconds a game. And that's it, just come back in the game. So I'm getting a lot of information. Just think about a guy who's so focused that he's thinking about every second. I'm thinking about every day. I'm thinking about every game, practice. So I'm using that information to grow, using that information to get better. So I was trying to wean myself away from bad games. I used to tell myself I can't have 2 back-to-back bad or tough games. Could never have 3. And then you want to string along the good ones. And that conference is just tough. Playing against Rondo, playing that Florida team with Joe Kim Noah, Al Horford, Corey Brewer, Torian Green was their point guard. They won 2 national championships when I was there. We beat them a couple of times the year that they won the first national championship. You go to LSU and you have Big Baby Davis, Brandon Bass on each block. I guess who can get a rebound? You know what I'm saying? You go to Arkansas and you got Ronnie Brewer, great New York point guard Eric Ferguson. You go to Mississippi State, Jamon Gordon and those guys. Ole Miss had a great team. Auburn had a pretty good team. Georgia had, I think the kid that played about 5-6 years in the NBA. Sunday out of games, they had a guy named Levi Stoops from Baltimore who could really hoop. Chris Lofton played at Tennessee, who for the first 2 years he was in college, it seemed like he never missed a three. It was like every time he shoot the ball is going in. He just went into their Hall of Fame a couple weeks ago. So, just playing against all these great players, these great teams, it helped me. It helped me become a better player because you play against great guys, you got to be great too. You got to develop yourself into great if you're not. And like I said, it just gave me the information I needed to get stronger, get quicker, jump shot, be more consistent, get to the free throw line and be more consistent there, not turn the ball over. The only player in University of South Carolina history with 1,500 points and 500 assists over their career. So, I always let the other people decide whether I was a legend, whether I was this or that. I just kind of just put in work, and that was going to be what spoke for me.
Okay. So, and then speaking into getting on campus at South Carolina, were you stepping into a winning culture, or did you guys have to turn it up to the SEC?
We definitely didn't step into a winning culture. My head coach was Dave Odom. He was a legendary coach already. He was assistant coach at Virginia with Ralph Sampson. So he was assistant coach for a 3-time National Player of the Year. Then he went to East Carolina. And then I think that his best stint as a coach came at Wake Forest. We coached Tim Duncan, Randolph Childress, all those guys that played at Wake Forest for him. And then he came to South Carolina after that. I remember him walking into my grandmother's house, and I just couldn't believe it because I saw him on TV so many times. And he's in Northeast Washington, D.C., sitting here. It just looked unreal. And they had a couple of tough seasons. And then my freshman class was probably one of the best classes that South Carolina ever had, or definitely had since then. Myself, Brandon Wallace, and Renaldo Balkman, who became a first-round draft pick. So, we were young guys just coming into that campus and just try to make a name for ourselves, not only publicly, but, just inside of that locker room. Just helping these guys understand that, we come to play, we're serious about what we're doing. We wanted their respect as well. We wanted the coaches' respect. We wanted the entire staff's respect. So a lot of hard work was put in, and, we probably turned that. I think my group is the only group to win 20 games every season.
Okay.
All 4?
Yeah.
That's tough.
Won 20 games every season.
That's impressive.
Definitely the only point guard to average 20 wins over his career. And, when you go into places, like even when I went into the 9th grade at Dunbar, definitely when I went into as a South Carolina as a freshman, you don't really think about what kind of legacy you're going to leave. It's daily, and I think the people who just put the work in every single day and not really taking much time off. And I think a lot of people misconstrue what time off means, or this work every day mentality. I think when people struggle, they take mental days off. They don't think about the game. They don't think about the task. They don't think about what can I do to get better. As basketball players, you need days off where you're not doing anything physically. But where's your mind and heart during that time where you're thinking about something that when your body recovers over that 24 hours, are you getting better that next day when you're back close to full strength? And that's something that I feel like every single day I was just thinking about getting better.
Good. So then, revisiting that conversation with your grandmother, I remember you were battling those injuries in South Carolina. So let's deep dive into that, because you're big on not missing no games.
Yeah.
You don't believe in none of that.
For sure. Probably. I mean, it's probably. Yeah, I wouldn't consider myself a legend. Like I said, I let other people speak for that. But this is probably the most legendary story that has ever been a part of my life. It's my senior year at South Carolina, and we are playing like those tune-up games. It's probably like 12th, 13th, 14th game of the season. Two or three games before SEC play. We're right after Christmas, right before New Year, so we're in that time. I think it's December the 29th, 2006.
Houston.
No, we're having a home game, actually. We're at Columbia, and my guy passes the ball, cuts through, but he's cutting through to kind of set a screen. Big man comes across my face and just kicks my foot. And my knee and everything goes out that way. And I didn't, I felt some discomfort, but I didn't understand what had happened. So, played through the rest of that game. I didn't even come out. And they told me that I needed an MRI, so I had to get an MRI. They knew, as doctors and trainers, they dealt with things like that before. But I got the MRI. I'm sitting at my apartment the next day after the MRI. It's a day off. And Mark Rogers, who's the athletic trainer, he tells me to, man, you need to get down here. I need to talk to you. And when I walk in, you have...
You think it was going to be bad?
No, for some reason I didn't even have that mindset because I didn't feel like something was broken or torn or I just didn't. I knew there was something wrong, but I just didn't think it would, be, drastic. And it was. It was when I walked in, the only thing he said was, "Trey, I'm sorry, man. Your senior season is over, and you have to get surgery. I'll be there to pick you up at 5 a.m." And I was like, man, I couldn't believe it. And I'm not a big crying person, but I walked out of there and I definitely shed a few tears that day because I'm trying to think about the future. This is my senior year. I want to play in the NBA. I want to play professionally, whatever. And I couldn't believe it, man. Made a couple calls, the people that I normally call. Delonte Taylor, definitely someone I want you guys to talk to, who is a legend in this city when it comes to basketball. Kurt Bone, who's the CEO of the popular and infamous All Days clothing boutique in DC. And I called my uncle. And 3 thorough guys, 3 strong men who helped me throughout my life, all had to get off the phone within 10 seconds, getting emotional. They had to hang up, all 3 of them, right? And I called the strongest person in my life, my grandmother, and just as calm as ever. As I told everybody, I tore my meniscus, and I would have to sit out, the rest of my season. And she was like, just don't worry about it, everything will be fine. Keep your head up, stay positive, pray, and you'll be fine. She said, I'll call you tonight. This is probably about 3 in the afternoon. She said, look, I'll call you tonight. I'll call you about 9:30 tonight. And I'm sitting back at my apartment again.
So how do you feel after she just said all that? In a calm manner when
I got surgery in the morning.
Riled up.
I have surgery in the morning. So I'm not even really, I know she's going to call me, But you just think of people supporting you. They're gonna call you with good words and pray. And I'm sitting back at my apartment, and she calls about 9:30, and she didn't even say hello. The first thing she said was, "Trey, you don't need to get surgery. You'll be able to play the rest of the season. Like, don't worry about it." And I'm like, what is she talking about? And she is God to me. To be honest with you, the female God. Like, she's just her presence, her impact. Strongest person I've ever seen in my life. She has 7 children now. 3 of the oldest 7 children were all murdered. And I never saw her waver. My mom being the 3rd of those 3 being murdered. The first 2 were murdered 2 months apart in the same year, 1991. And I never saw her lose it, She raised all of their children, the people who passed away. She raised the other children that she had. Then she raised their children. So you imagine what we're dealing with here. So when she's telling me this, I think it's crazy. But deep down, I'm like, this is grandma. Like, she knows something, right? But I'm like, my knee is sitting here not in good shape, right? And I had what you call the bucket handle tear. And think about what a bucket is with the handle on it. Like, yeah, you hold it up, but when you lay that bucket down, that handle is almost like a horseshoe, half a circle, and it flipped. Like you flip the handle on a bucket. That's why they call it that.
The muscle flip?
No, the meniscus is looks like a bucket handle, basically, and that meniscus flipped inside of my knee. So if this is my knee, the meniscus sits this way, and when it flips like that, like mine did, I can't straighten my knee and I can't bend it because it blocks the motion. So that's what position my knee was in at that time. Like, I was just sitting here like this with my knee bent as I'm talking to her, right? And it's flipped, like it's out of position while we're on the phone. And 9:30, so I'm getting picked up in 7.5 hours, right? And she's saying this like, we don't need to get the surgery. And she told me, the Holy Spirit told me to tell you that, you're covered and you'll be able to go and play. And I'm still like, this is. I was like, man, she gonna go to God on me. Yeah. And I was like, when I'm gonna defy God, I'm gonna defy her. And I'm like, man, this is tough. Because if I go get the surgery, I'm gonna call her back and say I got the surgery. Grandma, listen. So I'm confused. I'm be honest with you, I'm confused. And before we get off the phone, she reiterates it, like, Trey, don't get that surgery. Like, you're gonna be fine. Don't get that surgery. And I got the phone. Back then we had the flip phones, Nextel and everything. And when I get off the phone, okay, Grandma, I love you. Okay, love you too. I closed the phone, put the phone down, and I just grabbed my knee, and it went back in place. And it flipped back into the right position. 5-10 seconds after I got off the phone with her, and I went crazy.
Just like that.
I went crazy. I got up. I went to the living room and I'm doing like defensive slides. I'm like doing my knees like this. I don't feel nothing. Like, I don't, it's. I'm like
in shock at this moment.
I'm like, this is no way. So I'm calling people like, man, I can play. I don't have to sit out. I'm telling you. And they thought I was tripping. They thought I was losing it. So Mark Rogers, who's the athletic trainer, comes to pick me up at 5 a.m. And I remember getting into his car, and I'm like, hey man, I'm not gonna get the surgery, I'm gonna play. At this time, nobody's done that. Everybody got surgery. The pros, Gilbert Arenas had tore his meniscus. Even a couple years after that, Westbrook tore his meniscus. He had multiple guys tear their meniscus, and they all got surgery immediately, right? And he looked at me and just kept driving. Never didn't say anything. And I'm like, man, he must have thought I started smoking or something. Got high and I'm just tripping.
Yeah.
We go to the hospital. My head coach is upstairs in scrubs. Like he was going to support me in the operating room. We go through double doors. There's 2 sets when you go into the hospital. I walked through the first with him. He kept walking through the second set of double doors, and I stopped. And he looked back at me, and I'm like, he's like, what you doing? I'm like, I'm going to play. Like I'm not getting surgery. Looked at me crazy again, and now he's, like he's serious. And he calls coach. Coach comes down with the doctor, and the doctor tells me, Trey, I don't know what your grandmother told you. She's not a doctor. I get that God is involved. There was a conversation with God and everything, but you cannot play. He said it like 3 times. You cannot play. You cannot play. I led the league in scoring that year.
What?
I led the league in scoring that year. Yeah.
The SEC?
SEC.
Would you have pain throughout the season though?
So what happened, it flipped 7 times.
Throughout the year?
Yes.
So how did
Wow.
coach like?
So they would take me in the back. So why I did what I did after my grandmother got off the phone is because the game I toured in the first half. So when I went to the locker room for halftime, I remember them kind of like making this maneuver with my knee to get it back in place. Like, they knew I tore my meniscus already. Of course, they're not gonna say anything to me with a half left. But I remember them doing that. So like I said, when I got off the phone with my grandmother, I kind of did almost the same thing, and it went back in place. So they had to do it 7 times. 'Cause I was so determined to just keep playing that I'm like, look, just do what you got to do. I got to go back out here. It got to the point where I remember getting a steal against Vanderbilt, and it flipped out while I was getting the steal. So I plucked the dude at half court, and I limped, and I'm like jumping all the way down. I'm jumping, right?
Yeah.
Because I can't run, and I'm jumping, lay the ball up, and just go to the locker room. I literally laid the ball up and just kept running to the locker room. They maneuvered me back in. I had 32 points and 8 assists that night. That's just how it was going.
I don't even say
It was another divine experience that I had, and I always thought of myself as a person playing basketball. I got all this stuff going on in my life. I got I'm a basketball player, but me and my success as a basketball player was predicated on my strength as a person, so that was just me going through that, being determined to play. I cannot sit. I told him I can't sit over here for 18 SEC games. There's no way I'm gonna sit over here. Y'all gonna drive me crazy. I'm gonna stop coming.
Yeah.
I'm just like I just can't sit over here. I couldn't. I didn't. I missed 1 game. I missed one. They made me miss that. Like I was trying to play. But it wasn't an SEC game, so I ended up, playing the rest of the year. Got surgery at the end of that season.
Right. So after your collegiate career, what did it look like? Did you think you had a shot at the NBA right out of your senior year?
Man, listen, I was first team. I was first team all SEC.
Mm-hmm.
You only get 5 choices. I was looked at as the best player in the conference. Due to stats, probably wasn't perceived like, oh, he's the top player in this conference. But the way that I played that season, I was the best player. I got lied to by a couple of teams, blatantly lied to. Miami told me they would pick me 20, would change the rest of my life. The Dallas Mavericks, while the draft is going on, sends me a message that says, me and my agent will draft him with our last choice if he's still available. They didn't draft him. And, that summer it was talks about, after the draft, talks about, maybe joining somebody for training camp,
Again, signed.
summer league, and getting signed. Because Some people were trying to make me feel better, like, oh, it's probably better because you can sign a 3 or 4 year deal from that instead of being locked into the rookie deal and all. But I was just kind of taking it, step by step. I chose an agent and I ended up going overseas that first year. When you look back on it, like I said, you get there's 5 players on the first team, all SEC. All other 4 were first round draft picks, and the other person goes undrafted. So again, you can't control that, man. Like, what can you say? What can you do? I was disappointed, but I was more disappointed about the people who were supporting me, my family, my city, friends. Everybody was anticipating the draft. I was more disappointed for them. I knew I would play ball somewhere.
Right.
And again, I always just move forward. Like I remember that night, not getting drafted. It was that gut feeling. It's a little tough. Thought about it, but it didn't kill me.
Mainly all of us in here, being athletes or former athletes at some point, understand and get to a point where, like, it's a business and it can be, like you said, politics.
Yeah.
So how important the success you've had battling through those barriers of politics, how important do you think it is for, like, these up-and-coming generation of basketball players to know just to keep your head down and grind?
It's something about sticking with it. It's something about staying with it that I think the younger guys just, don't have the right mindset about. For me, I always found success in sticking with it. It always happened. Something happened that if I just stay with it, if I keep working hard, if I, have discipline, if I, keep pushing forward, I'll get something out of it. And those, that success is sometimes better than getting that glory in the beginning. Because failure builds us. It should anyway. Failure teaches us, because even when you succeed and you have that glory in the beginning, let's say you get drafted in the first round, man, there's so many pitfalls, there's things that happen, because God is in control and He wants you to learn from your life. He wants you to learn from your different situations. And I don't think that we really get much of a teaching points when everything goes well. And when we lose a game, we don't have that good of a season, when we don't get drafted, or we don't get go to the right school or get recruited or whatever it is, there's something about never quitting. And that allows the universe to put some positivity out there that finds you, knowing that he's still pushing, because you don't know where that line is, where if you just get to that line, so what you want, it will be right there. Mm-hmm. You always got those little pictures with it's like it's always a cartoonish picture where the guy has the axe, mm-hmm. and he's digging, and there's another guy on the bottom
with the diamonds.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And you just gotta keep digging. Mm-hmm. You gotta keep digging, and that's just what life is about, period. So keep digging. There's something in there. It might not be 10 diamonds like you want it, but shit, 1 diamond is it'll change your year. A change in a more prosperous year can change your life. So that's how I always thought about it.
And about that Miami Heat stint, I want to talk about that, because I remember vividly you describing to us they had put you through some type of workout. Mm-hmm. It was almost like a one-on-one for the spot, mm-hmm. almost. So talk about how that was and how prepared you were for that.
So, my first agent screwed up an opportunity like that. There was supposed to be this one-on-one with me and a kid named Chris Quinn, I think he's now on Miami Heat's coaching staff. White kid that played at Notre Dame. it was like in Miami, which because I went to their pre-draft workouts. Miami does everything one-on-one, like with that, you bring in the group. They just play one-on-one, do drills and stuff to kind of, let them see what you're gonna do. But you're gonna be playing one-on-one from the wing, from the half court, from wherever. And I actually fired my first agent because he never told me about this opportunity, because you get 2% of an NBA player's deal. Which mine, I probably would have got $600,000 if I had played in the NBA out of my rookie season. But you get 20%. The team that I go to overseas gives him 20% of whatever my contract is, which was like $60,000.
So he was looking more.
So he was looking, $60,000 a year. So he was looking more so for that opportunity. So my Miami Heat thing didn't come back full circle until like 7-8 years down the line. But they knew that they owed me one, and they didn't give it to me how I wanted them to, but I was still able to, fulfill that opportunity. And it's like I said, it's a lot of politics and stuff. It's a lot of lies told. It's a lot of that. Once again, things that you can't control. But I ran into a lot of that with the NBA. But I never dwelled on just not being able to sign like a 3-4 year deal, 5. How all these guys do, and making the $80-100 million contracts, which I always felt like my game spoke towards getting something like that. But the reality of it is you got to go through so many different loops and all of that stuff to get that opportunity, and they just found a way to not give it to me.
Speaking into that Miami Heat summer league time period, was the offer ever extended? I remember you were on a 10-day. Did they ever talk about moving forward with you being a part of their program?
Yeah, so basically what happened was they were adamant about me joining the G League team. And they had future plans for me. And the opportunity was supposed to be, hey, come back to our G League team. We're going to trade Mario Chalmers. And once we trade Mario Chalmers, we'll call you up. They trade Mario Chalmers after I became a G League All-Star. So I played in the G League All-Star game in Toronto, which is held at the same site as the NBA All-Star game. It's the same All-Star weekend of that legendary dunk contest with Aaron Gordon and Zach LaVine.
Wow.
So I was there for that. And they traded him like right before that little All-Star break. I called them, called Miami, said, hey, what are you guys gonna do? And they act like they couldn't give me that information. So I went back overseas, and that was it.
How was that experience though, playing in the summer league?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
So I played in the NBA Summer League, but I played in 2014 because I played in the G League for about, I didn't play the full season, but I played like at the end of the season in 2014. And what they were doing at that time, they developed a team full of G League guys to play almost like a G League All-Star team in the NBA Summer League. I was second in assists in the entire NBA Summer League that year, thinking I would have had another shot. I had an NBA GM from the Denver Nuggets tell me and my agent, because during that year, he was like, Tre Kelley's not an NBA guy. And okay. So I went to the NBA Summer League, and I just, I did my thing. And we played the Denver Nuggets in the NBA Summer League. And he came up to me, the same GM, came up to me as soon as the game was over, shook my hand, and say, man, I'm sorry, you're definitely an NBA player. But I didn't get that opportunity. So again, only thing you can do is just go out there and prove it. Can't really do anything about them choosing you or the politics of it. You just, I didn't let it bother me.
So having the many successes that you had throughout, and you step into coaching next, I know that you've seen a lot of successful careers with yourself. A lot of the people you mentioned, seeing a lot of the younger guys coming up, and a lot of the good runs with years that they've been having recently. What are some younger guys you felt like have had good careers that can be able to go down as legends in the DC when it's all said and done?
Man, there are a lot of guys, especially in Washington, D.C., man, that played, even if they didn't play college ball, just play high school. Because a lot of, when you think about it, a lot of people in this town, when I hear my name being thrown around, because my name is thrown around a lot, but being a legend, being this, being one of the best here and there, they're mostly talking about what I did in high school because it was visible. So I always look at a lot of guys. When I was a senior, I played against a guy who was at Cardozo named Ricky Brandon. He was like right up under me in points per game. Super polished guy. A lot of those guys just don't get the opportunity because of the politics. I don't think he played AAU. I did get a chance to play with DC Assault. And just being on that stage, if you can play, it's going to help you. Some people don't get on that stage during the summer. A lot of guys died. Nathaniel Holmes played at spin guard. He was killed my 9th grade year, his senior year. And probably one of the best players I've seen at that time. So many guys, Daniel Battle, who I played with at Dunbar, was one of the first great players that I saw early. I'm talking about had footwork. He was in the 6th grade and just had footwork, hitting backboard shots, like stuff that guys weren't doing at that time. Earl Risby, who I played with as a senior at Dunbar, he probably was the best backcourt in the last 30 years. Him and me. So it's a lot of names. Even the older guys, Kurt Smith, he's considered one of the best players, if not the best player that I've played in DC. Everybody talks about him. And when you see him, it doesn't even look like a basketball player. But I saw him in person at 50, 60, 65 in the games.
And as this is my last question. As basketball has gotten older and in our today's age, it's a lot of the private schools, other schools that are at the top. What do you feel the careers of the people that at like Sidwell Friends, or how June, the career he had at Wilson before it became Jackson Reed? Are there any players like that you feel like as time goes on that their legacies can put in conversation with yours? Well, maybe not yours, but like historically in DC.
I want them to. That's competitive for me. Mm-hmm. So that's the only time I probably can tell the truth about my game and stuff like that. It's not close. It's not close. That's a little bit competitive. But the younger guys, I want to see the young guys grow. Mm-hmm. So June, Darren Buchanan, I think the nostalgia of his time at Wilson spoke a lot. And that's legend. When you think about it, people who were there will probably tell his story, 5-10 years from now, when he's done playing. Somebody will talk about that. Somebody will talk about, I don't know how many championships they won in maybe a 5 or 6 year span. But somebody will talk about that, I think due to the different eras and age group, the thing that you want is for your peers, people a little bit older, people a little bit younger, to talk about you 30 years from now. So like I said, nobody goes into their time in high school, their time as college players, their time as pros, thinking, okay, this is what I want my story to be down the line. You just kind of go about it every day for 365 days, and then you do it again. And like that's you got some of these guys that'll be talked about down the line for sure.
Okay. And speak on coming back to Dunbar. Mm-hmm. Were you excited with that position? Were you, maybe I'll think on it? Were you enthusiastic about it? Or
returning to Dunbar as a coach was one something I was really excited about when I got the opportunity to coach there. But out of all of my basketball experiences, whether it was a player, when I was young, when I was in college, when I was a pro, that was the best time that I've ever had in basketball, for sure. I mean, I have this personality where I connect with people. And I'm doing something that I love, and I'm trying to instill the love of what I'm doing in young men. And I just connected with these guys, with you guys, from the beginning. A lot of coaches want you to they do all of this, say all of this to get you to trust in them. You want them to trust in you for sure because you want them to understand that what you're teaching is the route that they should go.
Right.
But I was able and understood how important it was to put that work in with them every day. That's going to help them trust you. So we did it all, from the conditioning part, from the beginning. We played so many games before we played our first. We were in spring leagues, summer leagues, and fall leagues. And it was almost every day. Young guys, so they don't need too much time off. I let them rest. They might have a Sunday here and there off. Took the team out of town. And I think that was a great experience for them because I think guys got the idea of wanting to be away and knowing how good it could be for you to be away. And a lot of those guys, if not all of them, went to school. And I wish I would have had those guys early on because they came to me with broken stories about the coaches and the schools that they played for, how their rebuild of love for the game returned when I was coaching them. They had already been contaminated with their high school coaches or their schools before me, and I just wish I would have made that decision a couple years before to coach at Dunbar. I think a lot of these guys would be in better situations. A lot of these guys would have had better high school careers, and we were on our way. We were definitely on our way. And dark hands step in sometimes where you can't control it. And Dunbar was not the same place that I left years ago. As far as the spirit of the school, and as far as the tradition of the school, because now you had people who wasn't from Dunbar, not even from DC, who were at the helm of the school, and that's not always good.